What if the most futuristic structures on Earth were actually built thousands of years ago? No blueprints, no electricity, no modern tools, yet somehow they have perfect symmetry, earthquake-proof layouts, and materials that repair themselves. From hidden machines carved in stone to sky-tracking monuments more precise than satellites, this isn't just ancient history. It's a challenge to everything we think we know. Ready to question reality? Precision that should not exist. Long before steel saws, power drills, or computer modeling, human hands shaped stone with a level of accuracy that still unsettles modern engineers. The first place this becomes impossible to ignore is Göbekli Tepe, a hilltop sanctuary in southeastern Turkey dated to roughly 12,000 years ago, older than agriculture, pottery, or metal tools. Here, massive T-shaped limestone pillars rise in circular enclosures, some weighing over 40 tons, carved with sharp reliefs of animals whose edges remain crisp even today. What stops specialists cold is not just the age, but the geometry. The circles are centered with precision. The pillars are standardized in proportion, and the carvings follow consistent depth, suggesting planning, templates, and skilled teams, not improvisation. Officially, this site was built by hunter-gatherers using stone tools. Yet experimental archaeologists who tried to replicate the cuts admit the time and coordination required would rival organized industrial projects. Klaus Schmidt, the lead excavator, famously said Göbekli Tepe forces us to rewrite the story of civilization itself. A popular theory holds that the site was a ritual center that created social organization, not the other way around. A more speculative idea, often discussed but not accepted, suggests lost surveying knowledge because the layout hints at astronomical awareness and symbolic geometry far beyond survival needs. Move forward several thousand years to Egypt, and the mystery intensifies. At Karnak Temple, colossal granite blocks, some exceeding 70 tons, were quarried in Aswan and transported over 200 kilometers. Granite is not limestone. It is harder than steel on the Mohs scale. Yet drill holes in these stones show spiral striations consistent with high-speed rotary drilling. Egyptologist Dennis Stocks demonstrated that copper tools can cut granite using abrasives, but the speed and uniformity seen in real artifacts remain hard to match even in controlled experiments. One fun but telling detail. Modern machinists who analyze these holes note tolerances tighter than what random hand labor usually produces. The cuts do not wander. They stay true. This has led to fringe theories about unknown mechanical aids, lost lathes, water-powered drills, or techniques never recorded in surviving texts. Mainstream scholars counter that mastery, repetition, and abrasive science explain it. The problem is not that explanations exist, it's that none fully satisfy the math. What connects Göbekli Tepe and Karnak is not mystery for mystery's sake, but an uncomfortable pattern. Across vastly different cultures and eras, builders achieved precision that looks designed, not accidental. They measured, they standardized. They executed plans that assumed the stone would behave predictably. That mindset feels strangely modern. And once you accept that ancient builders understood precision, the next question becomes unavoidable. If they could measure stone this accurately, what else did they know how to measure? Materials that shouldn't exist. If the previous part forced us to reconsider ancient tools, this one shatters what we think we know about ancient materials, because some ancient builders weren't just working with stone, they were engineering matter in ways that would stump modern chemists. Nowhere is this more baffling than in the case of Roman concrete, a building material that gets stronger with time. The most famous example is the Pantheon in Rome, built around 125 AD. Its dome, still the largest unreinforced concrete dome in the world, has survived nearly 2,000 years of earthquakes and invasions. What's shocking is that the concrete hasn't just endured, it's gotten stronger. According to studies published in journals like Nature Communications and Scientific Reports, the secret lies in the mixture of volcanic ash, lime, and seawater. This combination caused a rare chemical reaction over centuries, forming crystals called aluminum tobermorite, which fills cracks and strengthens the matrix. something modern concrete can't do. But if that's impressive, the sunken Roman city of Baiae, now off the coast of Naples, takes the story further. The concrete used there has resisted seawater for over 2,000 years. Our own underwater concrete, used for docks and platforms, often crumbles within decades. The marine concrete at Baiae, however, doesn't just survive. It hardens more when in contact with salt water. A team of scientists from Stanford and Berkeley in 2017 confirmed that the Romans unintentionally discovered a self-healing form of concrete. This material, enriched with volcanic ash, produces rare minerals like aluminum tobermorite and philipsite when exposed to seawater. These crystals grow over time, sealing cracks and reinforcing the structure. An advanced long-term chemical process modern researchers are still trying to replicate despite spending billions in R&D. Now here's where it gets weirder. The Romans didn't write any of this down. Vitruvius, their architectural guide, never mentioned the volcanic ash formula. Which raises the question, where did this knowledge come from? Was it trial and error? A lost recipe from earlier civilizations? Or even, if you lean into the fringe, the result of reverse engineering something they didn't build themselves? Conspiracy forums speculate Baiae was more than a resort town. Its bizarre structures and acoustics suggest experimentation with sonic resonance. Some even claim the concrete wasn't just strong, but electromagnetic resistant, hinting at forgotten energy systems. That's speculation. But what's undeniable is this: the Roman concrete is smarter than ours. One particularly eerie theory: that some ancient materials weren't designed for buildings at all, but for containing energy. Researchers have found strange insulative properties in some temple floors, including black volcanic tiles in certain structures in India and Mesoamerica, which share oddly similar chemical compositions despite being continents apart. Was this coincidence? Or were these materials designed to endure power, not just pressure? Layouts that function like machines. If ancient engineers mastered materials that could outlive empires, the way they arranged those materials reveals something even more futuristic. Certain ancient structures weren't just built to impress. They were designed to function, almost like machines. And two of the most revealing examples sit high in the Andes Mountains of Peru: Sacsayhuaman and Machu Picchu. At first glance, Sacsayhuaman looks like a fortress, with its zigzagging stone walls and immense boulders fitted together so tightly you can't slide a sheet of paper between them. But here's where it turns strange. The blocks, some weighing over 120 tons, have irregular interlocking shapes, as if custom cut like three-dimensional puzzle pieces. Modern architects admit this technique helps disperse seismic energy, making the structure nearly earthquake-proof. There's no mortar, just pressure and precision, achieved without cranes, steel tools, or written plans. And it wasn't random. The layout follows an almost modular logic. Each block supports the next, absorbing and redirecting stress. Some researchers believe the walls act like shock absorbers. That's not defense architecture. That's dynamic stability, a design principle only formally recognized in earthquake engineering in the late 20th century. Now enter Machu Picchu, perched atop a mountain ridge with a view no skyscraper can buy. Long believed to be a royal estate, recent studies by researchers like Dr. Alfredo Valencia and engineer Kenneth Wright have revealed something more advanced. The entire city was engineered like an integrated hydraulic system. Stone channels and drainways weave invisibly beneath the plazas, diverting rainfall and groundwater. With nearly 200 buildings packed into steep terrain, not a single flood disaster is recorded. Here's the fun fact: Machu Picchu's water management still functions today. In 2004, a massive downpour hit the region. While the modern town below was overwhelmed and flooded, the ancient channels at Machu Picchu absorbed and redirected the heavy rainfall through their pre-engineered stone drains and underground pathways, handling the storm with no backups or damage. That's when Peruvian hydrologists began admitting the site wasn't just spiritually aligned, it was technologically superior. Fringe theorists believe these layouts point to something deeper. One idea? that Incan cities were constructed to resonate with the land's natural frequencies, tuning in like instruments to the Earth's vibrations. Another theory ties the interlocking stones and tight water systems to ancient energy containment or storage, like a primitive capacitor. No proof. But the more you learn, the less the temple label fits. Because temples don't need to resist seismic loads, self-drain in monsoons, or sustain entire populations with invisible water grids. Machines do. Which forces a darker question. Were these cities actually reactors, not of energy, but of knowledge? And if so, what were they designed to activate? Structures that track the sky. Once you understand that ancient civilizations mastered materials, precision, and machine-like layouts, the next twist is perhaps the most mind-blowing. Many of their greatest structures seem built not just for people, but for the sky. These weren't random temples or ego-driven monuments. They were clocks, calendars, observatories, and in some cases they were accurate in ways we didn't even rediscover until satellites. Take Chichen Itza, the ancient Mayan city in Mexico. Its famous pyramid, El Castillo, was more than a religious centerpiece. Every spring and fall equinox, a shadow appears along the stairway's edge, forming the body of a giant serpent slithering down the steps. This shadow serpent isn't a coincidence. The pyramid's sides are aligned precisely to solar movement, and each of the pyramid's 91 steps, plus the top platform, adds up to 365, a complete solar year. Yet the Maya built this without telescopes, computers, or modern trigonometry. But if Chichen Itza is theatrical, Stonehenge is chilling. Located in southern England, this megalithic ring lines up with both summer and winter solstices. On June 21st, the sun rises directly over the heel stone. On December 21st, it sets between two uprights. Archaeologist Mike Parker Pearson's excavations suggest Stonehenge was part of a massive ritual complex, timed not to random seasons but celestial precision. Fun fact? NASA engineers who visited in the 1970s called it a primitive analog calculator. Now shift to the Sahara Desert, to a site almost never mentioned outside archaeology, Nabta Playa. Thousands of years before Stonehenge was built, ancient nomadic people arranged a circle of stones in this once wet basin. These stones do more than mark the solstices. Some of them align precisely with the rising points of Orion's belt, the same constellation many believe the pyramids of Giza were designed to mirror. The idea behind this theory is simple. These alignments may not have been created just to track the seasons. Instead, they could represent early star maps or symbolic pathways connected to beliefs about death and the afterlife. In Germany, the Goseck Circle, built around 4900 BC, features wooden gates aligned to sunrise and sunset on the solstices, functioning as one of the oldest known solar observatories in Europe. Here's the twist. It was only discovered in 1991 by satellite images. So here's the pattern. Across continents, across cultures, and across millennia, ancient builders created structures locked to the heavens. How? Why? Some scholars think these were calendars for agriculture. Others suggest navigation aids, since star patterns helped with long-distance travel. But the deeper, less comfortable theory is this. They were designed to sync the Earth with cosmic forces, possibly to harness energy, record time, or even communicate beyond this world. And if these alignments were deliberate, the unspoken truth follows. These people understood more about the sky than we gave them credit for. Designs that whisper of lost intelligence. So far, we've seen the impossible precision, indestructible materials, mechanical layouts, and cosmic alignments. But there's one more layer to this mystery. Structures whose design suggests forgotten systems of knowledge. Knowledge that might have disappeared long before recorded history. These aren't just buildings. They're warnings, records, and possibly remnants of entire civilizations we no longer remember. Start deep beneath Turkey, literally. The underground city of Derinkuyu, discovered by accident in 1963 when a man knocked down a wall in his basement, stretches 11 levels underground and once held over 20,000 people. It had ventilation shafts, stables, wineries, schools, chapels, and even a water system that ensured no contamination from above. No soot marks, so lighting must have been advanced. No evidence of struggle, so it was planned, not used for panic. And here's the riddle: who built it and why? Mainstream theory says early Christians dug it for refuge around the 8th century AD. But carbon dating and earlier artifacts suggest it's far older. Some researchers link it to the Phrygians, others to the Hittites, and still others, like alternative historian Graham Hancock, argue it predates known civilizations entirely, possibly built to escape a catastrophe from above. Solar flare? Flood? Ancient war? Nobody agrees. But what's certain is this: nothing about Derinkuyu feels primitive. Now shift to Petra, Jordan, a city literally carved into rose-colored stone. But here's what stuns archaeologists today. The front-facing facades aren't the mystery, it's what's inside. The Nabateans, who left no surviving blueprints, engineered rock-cut chambers with acoustic perfection, designed to carry whispers from corner to corner. Several researchers have noted resonance tuning in Petra's tombs and temples. These weren't just for the dead, they were for sound. Theories range from sacred chanting to frequency experiments, and some even wonder if healing or energy work played a role. Even more mysterious? The Baalbek Trilithon stones in Lebanon. These limestone blocks, each over 800 tons, were moved with a precision we can't explain today. They sit in the base of the Temple of Jupiter. But nobody knows why such mass was necessary. Moving one would take more than 1,000 modern men or specialized equipment that didn't exist at the time. Some engineers argue the platform isn't Roman at all, but pre-Roman, inherited by later builders. If true, then who moved these stones? And why was such mass required? And finally, the Sphinx, not for its shape, but for the erosion. Geologist Dr. Robert Schoch ignited controversy in the 1990s by suggesting the weathering on the Sphinx's body is from rain, not wind. If correct, the last time such heavy rains hit Giza was over 9,000 years ago, rewriting its date of origin by millennia. Egyptologists resisted, but the data lingers. Technology that shouldn't have been there. After exploring ancient structures built like machines and aligned to the stars, one final category refuses to stay buried: objects. Not buildings, not temples, but pieces of technology so advanced they make even modern engineers squint. And the most chilling part? They were found exactly where they shouldn't have been, deep inside the ancient world. Start underwater. In 1901, sponge divers near the Greek island of Antikythera pulled up the corroded remains of what looked like a lump of bronze and wood. It sat ignored in a museum for decades, until it cracked open, revealing interlocking gears, dials, and inscriptions. This was the Antikythera mechanism, now known as the world's first analog computer. Dated to around 150 BCE, it could predict eclipses, track planetary positions, and model the solar and lunar calendars. What makes it eerie? The gearing system was so precise, some teeth as fine as a Swiss watch, that modern gear-cutting methods couldn't replicate it until the 18th century. X-rays revealed a differential gear, a component supposedly invented 1,500 years later. No other object like it was ever found from that era. So, was it a one-off genius, or a surviving piece of a forgotten technological age? Now hop over to Baghdad, where in the 1930s, archaeologists found small clay jars with copper cylinders and iron rods inside. Initially dismissed as storage pots, later studies suggested something shocking. These could function as primitive batteries when filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar. Known today as the Baghdad batteries, they predate any documented electrical systems by 2 millennia. Nobody knows what they were used for: electroplating, healing rituals, or something far stranger. And then there's the famous Dendera light bulb relief in Egypt. Located in the Hathor Temple, it shows what appears to be a filament glowing inside a bulb-shaped object, connected by a cable to what looks like a power source. Egyptologists call it a mythological motif, a symbolic lotus and serpent. But engineers argue the shape eerily resembles a Crookes tube, a 19th century forerunner of the modern light bulb. Coincidence? Maybe, but the resemblance has kept the debate alive for decades. Finally, from tech to the skies, the Nazca Lines in Peru. These massive geoglyphs, spanning hundreds of meters, form birds, monkeys, and strange humanoid figures only visible from the air. Why would people with no known flying ability make artworks for the sky? Were they messages to the gods, giant calendars, or runways for something else? Hit subscribe and click the card on screen. What's your theory?